From Chicago's CAN TV, a look at the week's events is reported in the newspapers, in the blogs and online, and on radio and TV. This is Chicago Newsroom.
And hello, everybody, and welcome again to Chicago Newsroom. Another edition. This one would be the pre-election edition. We've got a pre-election today, and we'll have a post-election for you. Well, everybody's doing that, but that's what we're doing. And we have the great honor of having our pre-election show where we get to talk about this. So you see, you sit down and you say, okay, we're going to talk about the coming election, the one that's next Tuesday, and then Tom Dart, once again, lets all the air out of the election because he is focused back. He's focused all back on the mayoral election again. John Dempsey's with us. John Dempsey is with WLS-AM. He is a morning anchor on the WLS, and glad to have you with us.
Hi, Ken. How are you?
Rebecca Sanchez is with us. She is political columnist for Extra newspaper. Rebecca, first time on the show. Nice to have you here. So, let's try to figure this out. Tom Dart woke up yesterday morning and said, oh my God, I have 5 children.
Right.
I can't do this.
Right. So he realized, he realized yesterday, Ken, that his 5 children, A, are there, and B, are very important to him. This is just something that he realized on Wednesday morning. Isn't that amazing?
Or he woke up and somebody gave him the stats, and they said, you know what, you're not going to have enough money. Rom is going to outdo you with the funds. You may as well get out and save face.
I covered Dart's last week when he announced another one of his decisions not to evict people.
Yeah.
And we were asking him some questions about the mayor's race. And, Rom is out there and he's serious.
He's everywhere.
He's everywhere. And what are you doing? What's going on? And I could just kind of tell that he didn't really seem like he had the fire in the belly as a cliche, but he didn't have it. He didn't really seem to be. He said, well, I've made no secret about the fact that I'm interested in becoming mayor, but I didn't get the sense that this was something that he really was wanting to do.
There are some people are saying that the people around him, his own staff, wanted it more than he might have wanted it.
And it's kind of like a thing where it looked good on paper. Here is this guy from the 19th Ward, the Southwest Side. He can appeal to the black vote because of the cemetery issue where he handled it with great sensitivity, the grave robbing scandal at the African American cemetery, and the foreclosure issue. He's gotten a lot of great national publicity on that. So it kind of looked good on paper. And it's almost as if all these people who thought that he would be a sure thing and a great mayor maybe forgot to ask him.
Now, I wonder, though, as well, if this has anything to do with some news that I read. I'm not sure how accurate it is, but it basically said that some of the banks were going to sue because what he did in terms of not allowing the evictions of these people is completely not
we were talking about that last week, about how the second coming of Tom Dart as the anti-evictor was a little different. In fact, it was dramatically different than the first time, because this time around it wasn't as clear-cut a case. These were definitely people who were in default of their mortgages. There's arguments about the procedures that the banks followed and everything, but it was different from that first one where he was largely refusing to evict people who were tenants, who were renters in buildings that were being foreclosed, and that was a very different situation. So one couldn't help but conclude that maybe he was doing a little grandstanding there.
Right.
Yeah, and this announcement last week only concerned a couple of banks, I think Chase and Bank of America, because they had been in the news for sloppy paperwork and not following the rules. And it was almost as if he seized on that news to try to gain himself some more publicity for his potential mayoral campaign.
But then who doesn't?
Who's not?
Who runs for anything that doesn't want to be in the spotlight? Isn't that the reason?
But there have been some very interesting pieces of speculation that have sort of reared themselves in the last 24 hours. I was just reading a quote from, which I'm going to butcher, but Don Rose said that he has believed for a long time that there is somebody waiting behind the curtain, and that it's probably Lisa Madigan, and that maybe Tom Dart just realized that he just didn't have a chance if he got caught in the cogs between Rahm Emanuel and some bigger candidate.
I've heard some rumors. I don't know what you think, how accurate they are, but I have heard that Mayor Daley's brother might actually be
He's still
throwing in his
he's
hat.
also behind the curtain waiting
No,
to come
well,
out.
it could be. I'm not sure how accurate those rumors are,
Yeah.
but it is something I heard.
But I think we're all in agreement that the Tom Dart thing yesterday just didn't hold water. I mean,
The thing about the kids?
yeah, about the
Yeah.
family.
That's, I mean, every politician makes that announcement when they don't want to run for something. I want to spend more time with my family. If you look at those pictures of Richard J. Daley back in 1955 when he was first elected mayor, he had, eight kids, and many of them were small kids.
Right.
So that implies that the politicians who do run don't care about their kids.
Yeah.
Well, then why not give up the sheriff's office? If
It's not
Yeah,
exactly
it's
an
not.
easy job, that sheriff gig. I mean, I'm sure that he has a few 12-hour days and has to
Sure.
work occasionally on the weekend in there too.
And why
Right,
can't he
right.
just say, I didn't really want to be mayor that much. There's this huge budget hole. We've got endemic, systemic problems in the city of Chicago. I just don't want that job.
Did you see that
Yeah,
John Cass today is trotting out?
I saw that.
The whole weird thing about this sort of shell game that Obama is behind. Of course, I'm sure that maybe some of your folks over at the WLS have been talking.
Well, yeah,
about.
I think Cass is saying that Obama will make Anita Alvarez, the Cook County State's Attorney, a
Right.
federal judge.
Yeah.
And then Dart will ascend
Somehow,
to the post.
I'm not exactly sure how
Cook
he
County
would
State's
get
Attorney.
that, but yeah.
Exactly.
And there's no shortage of conspiracy theories, and we can sit here all day long, and that's why this is so much
Right,
fun.
it is fun.
Although she did come out and say that absolutely not. That it
Oh,
was
well, then that
ridiculous.
means it's true.
Yeah.
Then that means it's true, because a politician would never,
Right,
ever go
right,
back on their
right.
word
Right,
if they
right.
said,
Just like Lisa Madigan, the one time when everybody has kind of definitively said she said no, I'm not running, was her interview with WBEZ a week or two ago. And if you actually listen to the tape of that, it's like she's being badgered about, well, will you tell us definitively, are you going to run? And she says, well, no, I'm really interested in, but if you look at the transcript of it, it's no, I'm really interested in being so-and-so.
Right.
So this is silliness, what we're
but
engaging
I think
in.
Lisa Madigan would be crazy to not at least think about this.
Of course.
Because, if Bill Brady wins the governor's race next week, then Lisa Madigan would want to start gearing up to run for governor. But that is 4 years away.
Right.
Right away, there is an opportunity to become mayor of Chicago.
A
She
much
would-
better job.
Yeah, she would have to go against Emmanuel and his huge, the money he's got in his campaign fund. But like I said, I think she's going to wait until after next week,
Yeah,
after the election, and see how things shake out before.
Well,
making her
you
decision.
just mentioned the thing that we really need to transition into. What will Illinois be like in the Brady administration, John?
Well, he says he's going to cut the budget 10%. He says he's going to be a different kind of governor than the Democrats, which we've had since Blago. I think he will be a little bit different than Blago. I think he'll be a different kind of governor than Pat Quinn. But how much will he be able to get done, especially if Michael Madigan keeps his majority in the House, and the House is Democratic, and the Senate is Democratic. The Tribune yesterday had a piece talking about the veto session in which there might be a real move towards gambling, towards expanding gambling, putting a casino in Chicago, putting some more casinos in the suburbs and downstate. So that would be something that could happen in the veto session. You asked me what kind of governor he'll be. He'll have a very, very difficult job with the problems that the state has. He's vowed not to raise taxes, and he hasn't really been very clear on what he's going to cut or how he's going to cut the budget.
I think he might seriously cut some of the special interest. I heard him say that as far as the line items in the budget, that he would seriously look at them and consider cutting them, because obviously there's a lot of waste. There's a lot of money being funneled through that, and a lot of campaigns being funded as a result. And I mean, there has to be a reason why Illinois is one of the most corrupt cities in the country. I don't think that's
you were one of the panelists on the Channel 7 debate between Quinn and
Right.
Brady. And I guess it's because you are a political columnist and you work for Extra, I guess it's okay for us to ask this really kind of profoundly stupid question, but is there a sense of Brady and Quinn in the Hispanic community in Chicago? Is there any interest in the race? Is there any sort of preference?
Oh, there's an absolute interest. There's no doubt about that. Preference, I would say, depends on who you talk to.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are both, as we heard, as well as a result of that debate where Latinos for Brady actually came out and voiced their opinion, both sides. And so, of course, you have a lot of Democrats behind him. I would say more Democrats than anything else.
Well, let me put the question a little bit of a different way. In a couple of days on Saturday, we're going to see a huge rally, at least they're planning a huge rally, down in Midway Plaisance with the president choppering in to fire up the base. Will he fire up Latinos in Chicago?
I think he probably will, more so than other segments of the population, or I shouldn't say other segments. I think the African American community will probably also be influenced by his presence. I'm not too sure that'll be the case with other, let's say, non-ethnic groups. I think that Obama's presence will actually hurt. And I don't know, I don't think that their strategy is very good on that, because I don't know if they've looked at the numbers, but he's not that popular as a result of sort of the people have been very disappointed. A lot of promises.
Yeah.
I think I heard him yesterday, actually. He said, I am president, not king.
Yeah.
So I can't sort of pick up a magic wand.
He was on Jon Stewart's show last night and he was saying, I thought it was really interesting. He probably wasn't aware of the fact that some time ago Jon Stewart did a Photoshop of the "Yes We Can" poster, and then it said, "But we just never looked at the small print underneath." And you zero in and it says, "But that doesn't necessarily mean we will."
Well, he sold himself to America as this game changer, as this transformational figure. And it's kind of like if you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Because after selling himself that way, people are like, okay, all right, turn water into wine now, perform miracles, and he's not been able to do it.
I thought it was very disingenuous to actually go out on a limb like that and say that, because when you set yourself that high, you're bound to be disappointed. I mean, where else can you go if not down?
Were you by any chance at Grant Park on the night of the election?
No, I watched it on TV, like everybody did, and you couldn't help but be moved by what you saw that night. But like you just said, when you watched a scene like that in Grant Park, where can you go but down?
Well, it's interesting to me because I was there and I was in the press area and also kind of covering out on Michigan Avenue and wandering around and getting tape. And I got to say, as a lifelong Chicagoan, I've never experienced anything like that night in Chicago. It was, you can't really explain it. But
you may not ever experience
probably
it again.
Never. No,
and you won't
not
experience it this Saturday at the Midway Plaisance.
No, you will not.
I don't think you will.
And that's what fascinates me, is that there was this moment in time when, I mean, not everybody who was at that thing was a completely dyed-in-the-wool partisan, Democrat. I would bet you that there were some kind of curious conservatives who were there too, who were kind of swept up in this. It was an amazing and dramatic moment, and as you so well point out, it's going to be such a ghastly comparison to be down.
That is why he is coming to Chicago, because the Democrats are in big trouble. If you look at the landscape of the United States and the importance of this election, they need to allocate their resources very carefully. They should not be having to come to a blue state like Illinois.
Absolutely.
And the fact that they're coming here means that they are in big trouble here.
And it's also kind of just curiously funny that they're not doing it in the same place in Grant Park, because that's where the Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert watching TV rally is going to be held.
One of the things that I've been hearing, which I'm sure is kind of a joke, but the no, we couldn't. Sort of following the yes, we can.
Well, let's talk seriously about Giannoulias versus Kirk. I mean, the polls are now once again showing Kirk up a little bit. So those two important races could very easily go to the Republicans, right?
I think so. I think right now the chances of Kirk defeating Giannoulias, in my opinion, are a little bit better than Brady defeating Quinn. Just to go back to the governor's race for a second, I can't call that. I think the momentum is with Brady, obviously. But when you've got Rich Whitney and especially Scott Lee Cohen spending the kind of money, spending the kind of money he's spending, there's just no telling where those votes might go. This will be a close race between Brady and Quinn, but with a depressed African American turnout and with the fact that Quinn doesn't really inspire folks in the African American community, Brady has a good chance. I think Kirk's chances are better because, you look at their resumes, he's got the stellar resume. The one, flaw has been his exaggeration of the military record. But beyond that, he does have a very distinguished resume, and Giannoulias' resume is just a little bit more thin. Now, the diehard Democrats will vote for Giannoulias because they know he'll support Obama's agenda in the Senate, but it all comes down to turnout. How many of the diehard Democrats will show up?
Well, but I believe he's been a senator for five terms. Is that correct?
In the House.
Congressman, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, well, I think some people in the North Shore would say, well, what has he done?
Well, I think they've reelected him 5 times because they like him up there, because it's a very moderate district, and he has been a moderate, kind of social liberal, economic conservative, a hawk on defense, and that's one area where he's run into problems in this election because he's not running in this, small, moderate North Shore district. He's got to run statewide, and I know that conservatives on the far right haven't been happy with him. They were talking about not supporting him, but now I think we've seen some of that conservative support coalesce around Mark Kirk.
Well, I mean, what this whole thing really comes down to is, and I've heard millions of arguments on this, but the only one that it comes down to is if you basically, in general, support the Obama administration and the Obama agenda, you have to go out and vote for Giannoulias.
Right.
And if you do not support it, you have to go out and vote for...
And I think that'll be the case for a lot of Democrats.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
I think that they will vote for Alexei based on that relationship.
Not really anything to do with the merits of the candidates, but just how you want that seat to vote.
Because Kirk would be more likely to oppose the Republican agenda than Giannoulias would be to oppose the Democratic agenda.
Yeah.
He would be a very loyal vote for President Obama. Yet I could see Kirk, voting with the president on different items depending on what the issue is. So again, if you are a solid liberal and a solid Democrat, there's no question that you would vote for Giannoulias. But then the only other question is how many of those folks are going to come out and vote? Are they feeling
and then
passionate?
you have the independents.
And
you
the
never
independents.
know what they'll do.
Yeah, I want to get a little time in here for the Cook County assessor race because of all the races that seem to be generating some buzz and some interest, that's one that is a little bit down ballot, but I think there seems to be some interest in it. I have to disclose that I've had many lives before I was a CAN TV host, and one of them was I did work for Forrest Claypool 4 years ago. So I don't know how objective I can be about this, but I think it's very interesting to see how he's getting virtually no Democratic support at all. I mean, even Governor Quinn, if I'm not mistaken, right, has come out for Barrios.
Well, but you never know how much of the dirt, I'll say, that's been pinned on Barrios for giving his friends the tax breaks.
Yeah.
You never know how that's going to go, and I believe there are a couple of other things that are going to come out on that.
But you guys didn't, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was in the last couple of days you've done this kind of comparison sheet of the candidates.
It just came out today.
Today, and you point out that if Barrios is elected, he will be the first Hispanic assessor.
Right.
And so, I mean, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, wow, I'm Hispanic in Chicago. I read that, I say, that's my guy. right? That's
Well,
who I got to vote for.
Yes, except for the fact that many are aware of some of his dealings. And I don't think that people necessarily like that.
John, can I ask you? Your audience at WLS
Right.
is a conservative to libertarian kind
Right.
of group.
Right.
It would strike me that Claypool would be really kind of popular with your
Well,
audience.
yeah,
Is that?
Yeah, we've had him on our air, and folks, calling in, which is very unscientific, of course,
Yeah.
but they've responded very positively to him. I just don't see him winning. I don't
Yeah.
see him winning because, Barrios. I think if you haven't been paying attention, if you haven't been paying attention, and you're a Democrat, you're just going to walk in and vote for the Democrat.
Right,
I know
right.
Forrest has been spending a lot of money. But it was, I guess I found it odd that he did not run against Todd Stroger, and that he said, I'm getting out of politics
Yeah.
and I'm forming a
Yeah.
healthcare company.
Right,
And
right.
then within a few months, that's
He's
by
not.
the wayside,
Right.
and now he's mounting this challenge against an eminently flawed, candidate. But I don't think Forrest excites folks in the black community,
Right.
and there is also the fact that Barrios is a Hispanic office holder trying to jump to another position.
Right.
I mean, he's going to get a lot of support from the Lakefront liberals, what's left of that group, but I really see Barrios winning that race.
Yeah, I mean, it strikes me that he's in an interesting position of putting together a bizarre coalition of, as you say, the kind of the Lakefront liberals, whatever's left of that, and the sort of activist conservative and sort of libertarian movement.
Reform, yeah.
Reform, but that's probably not enough.
It's not gonna be enough. Of course,
Yeah.
Jesse Jackson Jr. supported him.
Yeah.
Now I don't know if Jackson's female acquaintance is supporting him.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
Right, yeah, I was going to say that's not saying much, to be honest.
What about? I'm assuming Toni Preckwinkle is.
I think
is
she'll
kind of a
win.
shoo-in,
I
is
think
that
so
right?
too. I think so too, and I think she
Well,
will.
we should say
certainly,
that she's running for
Cook
president
County
of the
Board
Cook
president.
County
right.
Board.
I think that she will make a difference. Certainly, much more than Stroger. I think that my impression from when I've met her, I think that she is serious, and I do think that she'll make a positive difference.
There's a very interesting and highly sensitive issue that I think Toni Preckwinkle is already beginning to confront, which is that if you want to go in and start seriously cutting the budget at the Cook County of Cook County, because of the weird history of Cook County versus the city of Chicago, it's a historical fact that many of the higher level government people in Cook County are African American. And if you're going to start hacking away at that government, you are going to, I don't see any way you're going to be able to do it without firing some pretty prominent and well-paid African Americans, which would be a tough thing for her to do, I would think.
Yes, but I think that regardless of your race, I think that you'll make choices nonetheless on who's competent, who's qualified, who seems a little shady, I'll say, and I really don't think it'll make a difference.
That'll be a big test for her. I mean,
It
she's
will.
from the liberal, Hyde Park, Kenwood community, and it'll be a big test for her if she's truly committed to
Right.
reform. Will she do that? Will she cut the dead weight? Many of those jobs, as you said, are held by African Americans, and that's going to be a big, big test. She's not going out in her campaign saying, I pledge to get rid of all these payrollers.
Right, right.
She's not doing that.
Right.
I think she's helped by the fact that she has got this reform background. And Roger Keats, the Republican, I'm a little bit surprised that he hasn't waged more of a campaign.
So am I.
I thought that in this year, a Republican, there are Republican-leaning suburbs of Cook
There
County.
certainly are.
I thought that a Republican could maybe make a go of it. We've had Republican county board presidents before, Ken.
Well, it's interesting because Tony Parica, I mean, how do you put this delicately? Tony Parica has never really been seen as a serious, I suppose. Could we put it that
He's
way?
very
and
popular on my station.
Right, and just put an asterisk there. But it always struck me that a more serious-minded, business-oriented Republican could really, I mean, we've had Republican county presidents before, and it would seem like this would be a really good time in the Republican resurgence, but it hasn't happened.
And Roger Keats has got a very good background in Illinois politics, but I'm surprised that someone like you're describing didn't come out of the woodwork and decide to run.
Yeah.
Back, especially if Todd Stroger had won the primary, it would have been a shoo-in for a solid Republican, but it just didn't happen.
Yeah, interesting.
All right.
So, what are you looking for? What are going to be the things that you're going to be waking up Wednesday morning and saying, "I knew that was going to happen. That's the thing I predicted. That surprised everybody."
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I think that's
Are there going to be any
I think
surprises?
the Republicans will win the U.S. House.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about the Senate. What would I do think Kirk is going to win, and I cannot predict.
Can't say about
the
Brady.
governor's race.
You know, I was listening to on your station, listening to Rowe and Roper a couple of weeks ago, and they were actually getting seriously into this speculation about what Scott Lee Cohen might do, the damage that Scott Lee Cohen might do, because I hadn't even considered him as a political blip on the radar, but he's spending so much money that he could get just enough votes to take it away from.
Right.
Whom?
I think Scott Lee Cohen's getting decent support in the black community. Baxter Twilley is his running mate, and he's an African American gentleman. And I was at a news conference with Cohen a few weeks ago, and he was asking Baxter to answer the questions. And that was the news conference where he stalked off because he was angry at the reporters. He's got a little bit of a short fuse, but he's spending a lot of money, and if you don't really know the issues and you hear these people on the radio saying, I went to a job fair and I got a job because I went to a Scott Lee Cohen job fair, if you're not paying attention to the issues, you might say, well, that's good enough for me.
Right.
And the question is, I think he would take more votes from Quinn than from Brady. So I think that's just another of the long list of reasons that Pat Quinn has to be worried.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing I don't think is helping Brady, Plummer.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a very good point.
I really don't think he's helping.
That is an excellent point, and I don't think the Democrats have done a very good job of playing up the weaknesses of.
The Sun-Times had a devastating editorial a couple of days ago about Plummer, and as she compares to Sheila Simon, Quinn's running mate, and he's a young guy who's works for his father's lumber company and doesn't really have a resume. Certainly nothing like Simon's been a law professor and things like that. And I am surprised that the Democrats haven't played that up more.
It is surprising.
I'm sorry, let's do 20 seconds on the 10th district. Is Dan Seals going to be able to finally take that race?
I think that Dold will win.
I think Dold will win, so it'll stay Republican.
I think Dold's a moderate, as we've discussed. It's a moderate district, and I think this is a Republican year.
Well, that's where we're going to have to leave it for now. We'll see you again next week, and we'll talk about it some more. But I really want to thank John Dempsey from WLS Radio, morning anchor and reporter for WLS, and an old friend of mine for a long time. And I'm really glad you came on the show. Thanks, John. Thanks so much. And Rebecca Sanchez is a political columnist for Extra newspaper.
Bilingual.
Extra bilingual newspaper. It's extra bilingual. And we'll see you guys again, I hope, sometime on the show. All right?
Thanks for having me as well.
So you've been watching your favorite program, Chicago Newsroom, right here on CAN TV, and it's a presentation of CAN TV. You can see it right here on cable, but you can see it on blip.tv. Just check it out online. You can do that. I'm Ken Davis. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.